I usually get park and I could go for the curb to get out. Instead of wait for the.
Good afternoon. We'll call the special meeting of the New Ulm Planning Commission to order. It's New Ulm, Minnesota, Thursday, August 2nd, 2018, 4:30 PM. Item 1, approve the minutes from the May 31st and June 28th meetings.
I have one correction on the June 28th meeting, page 4, where it's the quote from Beth Favre and, no, wait a minute here, from Mr. Favre. It says they purchased their home 5 years, but were not told about 5 years ago, I think is what it is. Otherwise, I'll approve them as corrected.
I'll second. With the
Okay, we have
correction.
a motion and a second approving the minutes with the correction. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item 2 is a public hearing. Consider the application of the New Ulm School Limited Partnership requesting a reduction in the number of required off-street parking spaces from 83 to 74 for the State Street Apartment project located on the property legally described as Lot 1, Block 1, State Street Theater Subdivision, street address 15 North State Street.
Okay, in your agenda packet, you've got a staff report on this request. I'll note in the subject that reduction is spelled incorrectly. The applicant is Heidi Rathman on behalf of the New Ulm School Limited Partnership. Unfortunately, they don't have any representatives here today, and the reason for that is they had a corporate function that required all staff to attend. The subject property is zoned R3, which is multiple family residence district. The required number of parking spaces is 82.5, so we round that up to 83. The number of parking spaces provided on site is 74. So the additional number of parking spaces required to meet the requirement is 9. So some background information on the request. The property is bounded by Center, North State, First North, and North Washington Streets. The former New Ulm Middle School is located on the property. The block on which this building is located is divided into 2 lots. Lot 1 is the proposed location of a residential housing project. Lot 2 will continue to be used as a theater auditorium. The housing project proposed for Lot 1 would have 55 units. The unit breakdown would be as follows: 1-bedroom 12, 2-bedroom 33, 3-bedroom 10. The New Ulm City Council, at its June 5th, 2018 meeting, approved the request of the applicant to utilize 3 on-street parking stalls on the east side of Washington Street from Center Street to First North, and 6 on-street stalls on the south side of First North Street from Washington Street to State Street as designated resident parking for the housing project. This authorization allowed the applicant to comply with the city code parking requirement for the project. The City Council, at its July 17th, 2018 meeting, tabled a request by Dan Buechner and area residents to rescind the previous parking authorization, stating that this action would be a safety concern and set a bad precedent. Following this discussion, the City Council directed the applicant to apply for a variance to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces for the project from 83 to 74. The city has approved the following variance requests for reduced parking in the past. So there are 5 different situations that are identified, and the reduction in the number of parking stalls varies by project. I would note that all of these projects have a strong number of units that were intended for occupancy by seniors. And so that was the primary reason given for the reduction, is that they were intent on having a senior population. The one I would note is Highland Regency House, where we went from 75 stalls to 51. That's a little bit more of an, I guess, active senior group, I would say, than than maybe the rest. For a variance to be granted, the applicant must satisfy the statutory three-factor test for practical difficulties, and this is from state statutes. The first factor is that the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. So in this particular case, is it reasonable to have an apartment building in this location? That's what the test is. The second factor is that the landowner's problem is due to circumstances unique to the property and not caused by the landowner. And the third is that the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Variances are also only permitted when they are in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the city's zoning ordinance and when the variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So you really have 5 factors that you're supposed to look at when you consider a variance request. And if you look at the criteria on the back of the application form, these are the items that are listed, and this is what we request applicants to give you a response to. So attached is a copy of the application, a map of the area, and an informational statement and an aerial photograph. And I would just like to briefly talk about some of the information that is provided on the informational statement. The first part has to do with parking. The applicant indicates that 1.35 parking stalls would be adequate for this project, and they base that on their experience in managing housing in a variety of different locations. I believe that at the present time they're managing 3,500 apartment units, so they do have, a fair amount of experience. The second thing that they address is snow removal. You'll note that it is their intent to contract with a firm that will remove the snow as quickly as possible. They also have the benefit of using the theater parking lot to help them out with that situation. And if necessary, they do have a couple locations on site where they can store snow if they have to do that, and then truck it out at a later date. Staff would, and then I also should note that as far as attachments are concerned, there is an aerial photo. Staff would recommend approval of the request for the following reasons. Number 1, City Council has determined that a parking variance would be preferable to allowing on-street parking for the project. Number 2, the variance is in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the city zoning ordinance and is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Number 3, the applicant has demonstrated that there are practical difficulties in complying with the city code. Then, in addition to that, staff would recommend that you give consideration to, not make it subject to, but give consideration to advising the city council that it would be appropriate to remove the yellow striped curb on First North Street and restripe that area for angled parking, which would be consistent with the other angled parking in that location. And this would increase the amount of on-street parking that's provided in the area, and that could then be used by future tenants, visitors, and the neighborhood. And the fire chief has indicated that the adjoining parking lot curb cut will provide improved access to the building if required. You may remember that that area was striped yellow in order to provide access to the building for fire purposes, and that with this curb cut they now can actually get the truck closer to the building, and so that makes some access more easily accomplished. Given that fact, then we can restripe that area, and that helps us with our parking problem.
Which side was that? That was on the Washington School side?
No, that's on the
Washington?
First North
First,
Street
that's
side.
not angled now? It is angled.
It's striped yellow at the
Oh,
present
the
time.
thing is, okay.
And if
So-
you look at the
map
site
sh-
plan that was included, actually, if you look at the aerial, you can see it on there.
In the center section of the 38 building, there's a spot there that's been striped yellow for
That.
parking the hook and ladder in there, if they need to access the roof. With the
Right.
proposed parking lot, they'll have a curb cut coming in up into that corner of that building and be able to access it that way.
The parking on the Washington Street side, that'll stay parallel.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The angled here, on this side.
Is that it?
That's it.
I have one question on the report that was issued by Heidi Rothman. It says there's one, when estimated cars per unit, one bedroom LTH. What does LTH mean? Any idea?
I believe she's referring to, they have 4 units that are to be occupied by homeless people. And I think that's who she's referencing. What you have to understand, one of the reasons for doing that is that in order to secure points to
the
elevate your
credits.
project to a point where it will be selected for funding, this is one area where you can achieve that.
Got a question, Dave. Is there a condition that they have to maintain that for so many years? Well, their obligation if their points, if you're saying they apply for.
I don't know what the term is of that requirement. I expect it probably, though, runs with the life of the project. So as long as it's, they're receiving tax credits, I expect that that's probably a requirement.
Okay, what are your wishes, folks?
Did we receive any more comments from the neighbors at all in regards to this? Anything written or oral?
No.
So what this effectively does, it takes away that counting the street as part of their parking stalls.
Correct.
Correct.
It doesn't make the problem go away, it's just, really takes away the permits for the on-street parking
Correct, yeah. The parking will be open for everybody then.
Right.
Yep.
instead of a resident parking permit.
Yeah, I should note that the city council, tabled the previous request, and I think depending upon the action that this body takes and that the council then takes, if it is approved, then they will rescind that previous action of designating
Yep.
on-street parking for the
June meeting.
building.
Move to approve per staff recommendation.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend an approval per the presentation. You want to keep those on the bottom also in there, about the request for the parking with the yellow stripe?
Correct.
What are your motion? Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Let me get back up to the top here. Item 2, receive report of city council decisions.
Okay, the council at their July 3rd meeting tabled the application of Beth and Jason Vavra requesting the conditional use permit to place the special purpose fence on the property located at 511 Summit Avenue. And the reason for doing so was to hear from the building official on how the fence application was processed and what the applicant was told. So that particular item came back at the July 17th meeting, and at that time, the city council authorized the approval of the conditional use permit with conditions that were identified by the planning commission. Also at that meeting, they approved the establishment of a tax increment financing district. It's District H-9, to provide financial assistance for the State Street apartment project at 15 North State Street. They also received your recommendation regarding the project being consistent with the city's land use documents. They also approved a land density variance for that particular project, so they can go from 45 to 55 units. And they approved front yard setback variances for that one parking lot on the street frontages for North State and First North. And as I just mentioned before, they tabled the request of Dan Beekner and area residents regarding the on-street parking matter. At that meeting, they also had a couple items regarding the sale of property to DLC. In this particular case, the city will be purchasing property from the current owner, which is the New Ulm Economic Development Corporation, and then selling it to DLC for $1. And then they also authorized city staff to acquire a recreational trail and utility easement from Prairie Land Development, which would be located where the underpass is on Highway 14 near Cashwise. And the easement would help us extend a path to the west of the hill, and would allow us to make greater use of the underpass area.
Okay.
That's it.
Anything from the Heritage Commission?
July 16th and 17th, we had the architect down with their assessment team and began the assessment of the Hernum Monument. And they've taken samples, pictures, lots of notes, and are back compiling that stuff together to see what they come up with some solutions maybe to what our problems are up there. So we're waiting to see.
Is that a couple months out, or?
They have to, I believe the middle part of September, they have to have a report back 75% complete to be sent to the state for them to review, and then the whole project needs to be done by the end of the year.
Okay,
That's it.
thank you.
And just share with the group what the foundation of the statue.
Oh,
I found that interesting.
It was talked about in the books and history that we found that it was granite foundation with or granite footing with a limestone foundation. And some place in there they found that the footing was at 10 feet deep. Well, current building standards, you got your footing down here and your foundation is built off of that. Well, they've got granite, which is fieldstone, stacked up 10 feet and mortared in, and then the limestone starts at grade. So there's a 10-foot foundation all the way around that building.
And
Yeah.
dug. Small shovels.
Yes. So
Okay.
it's pretty solid.
Anything else from the commissioner members? Nothing else on the agenda, meeting adjourned.